What's going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I am going to be talking about how I upgraded my Led Zeppelin vinyl collection. This is something that has crossed my mind a few times in the past, and for a while I didn't know quite sure if this should be the rabbit hole that I should go down, but luckily due to some very fortunate circumstances, pure luck, and also my collecting rules changing, I decided to forego it and get my hands on the deluxe vinyl editions of the Zeppelin catalog. Now, I have done a video a while ago talking about the reissues themselves, and if you want to peel back and check it out, I suggest you do so. That'll really dig into the minutia behind these reissues, the sound quality, mastering, pressing, etc. This video will solely focus on the motive of why I upgraded my collection and briefly touch on the companion material that is featured with these deluxe editions. So enough of the chit chat, let's jump into what this video is all about. So the idea of me building a Led Zeppelin vinyl collection coincided at the same time of both when I started to collect vinyl and when I started to become more of a Zeppelin fan, because all my life, I had grown up listening to Led Zeppelin on classic rock radio, and of course, both my parents are fans, and I knew that at some point I wanted to immerse myself in their catalog, and timeline-wise, this was around the summer of 2014, and that was also when the new Led Zeppelin remasters and deluxe editions started to come out, so the timing was absolutely ideal and perfect. Now, like anyone, I kind of had rules when it came to buying formats, and needless to say, I ended up buying both the CD and vinyl versions, but on CD, I gravitated towards the deluxe editions with the companion audio of live and studio material, and on vinyl, I stuck to the standard albums since I was a bit of a purist back then and believed in owning the albums as they were originally released without any other additional bells and whistles. Now, of course, with time, my rules for collecting change, and as time went on, I became intrigued with various facets of vinyl collecting that add fuel to the fire, so to speak, whether it be different pressings from different countries, different mixes, deluxe editions, and so on. Now, with what I had just said there, deluxe editions, these can be presented very lavishly, whether it be an extra LP of various recordings or in the form of a box set with studio and live material. And with time, even though I would be gravitated towards these types of releases on CD, I felt the need to have them on vinyl. So whether it was the Black Sabbath box sets or the Ramones anniversary sets, I began to collect those. Plus, outside of that, I'm an avid bootleg collector, and those can consist of various studio outtakes and live shows, so I just had this sort of affinity to own everything and anything to do with an artist that I love. And as my collection was building with these types of vinyl pressings, I kept referring back to my Led Zeppelin collection, which consisted of the basic remastered versions of the albums, and I wondered if I had missed the mark on getting those deluxe editions because some had become out of print and hard to come by, and I always hoped that they would be repressed or reissued again. Flash forward to around May of 2021, I started working at my local record store called The Rock Shop, which I now manage, and a part of my job is buying inventory. And at one point, I noticed that the deluxe Zeppelin vinyl pressings were back in print and were able to be ordered, and it got me thinking about upgrading from my single LP pressings to these. Now, just outside of that, around the same time, I had noticed that there was a legal bootleg release out there from the show at the Olympia in Paris from 1969, and that show was the companion audio for the first Led Zeppelin album. And it of course intrigued me because it is such a great show and I wanted it on vinyl, and it was then that I was faced with either buying the legal bootleg and bypassing the whole upgrade process just for the sake of having that show, or I purchased the show by getting the first deluxe album and then following suit with everything else. And since I am a completist, it was an all or nothing type of deal. So sure enough, I brought in my single LP Zeppelin records to my record store to sell, and then I ultimately took the trade value for those and bought all of the various deluxe editions. Now, thankfully, I was able to get all but one of the deluxe editions at the store, but the one that I had some trouble with was Houses of the Holy. This one seems to be the one that cost the most to get, and it was rarely available anywhere. I looked, but luckily I was able to track down an eBay seller that was selling a copy for a ridiculously inexpensive price, so all was well in that regard. Now, it's been over 5 years since the Zeppelin catalog has been remastered and reissued, so this video won't provide any new revelations since they have been discussed elsewhere, but just to paint a full picture, while the single LP reissues replicate the original pressings to the T, the deluxe vinyl editions do add some more to the overall package aside from the audio content. So right off the bat, you have the main album cover of the respective album, and usually you'll have the full gatefold artwork or back cover on the flip side, but instead we have a negative rendering of the album cover. It's something different, unique, and it gives the companion audio featured with each album its own unique cover. Now, in most cases, Led Zeppelin albums came with gatefold sleeves, and when you open them up, you see the gatefold intact as is, but since it's a trifold gatefold type of release, you open it up again, and you have some cool period photos, along with sometimes a dedicated track list to the companion audio. And sometimes, if it's a case where the album came in a single sleeve, you would have the back cover featured right here, along with more photos, as well as the track list to the companion audio. Now, for some albums where the artwork was a bit extra, such as physical graffiti, of course, they'll do the various die cuts and add the companion audio with its own dedicated sleeve. Same goes with In Through the Outdoor. The companion disc as well got its own sleeve. And hell, even some of the more elaborate artwork elements, such as the pinwheel on Led Zeppelin 3, is perfectly replicated. Now on to the content of the companion discs, and this is where some of the fans can be a bit divisive. Like I had mentioned with Led Zeppelin 1, you get a live show from the Olympia in Paris, which was a radio broadcast, and that is such a fantastic recording and so cool to see it get a proper release. But in terms of studio content, what we are presented with are various rough and alternate mixes, alternate takes, work-in-progress versions of songs, as well as some unreleased songs. Now, these versions weren't specifically mixed for this release. They were already existing mixes that were done when the respective albums were being recorded, more than likely for Jimmy Page and the rest of the band to listen to for reference or prior to doing overdubs. Now, if you are approaching these for the first time and you are expecting some major revelations to be unturned, you might be disappointed. And honestly, in order to appreciate the companion discs, you really need to know and love the albums from a production standpoint and have an understanding of the arrangements and layers that were used, because it will make listening to these recordings interesting to pick out the various differences. And after having listened to everything, I can confirm there are cases of alternate guitar solos used, different vocal takes, different keyboard textures, mixes where certain elements are more pronounced, or even things that didn't appear on the final mix, different arrangements of songs and such. Just like the brief liner notes mentioned with each of the albums, it presents a portal to the time of the recording of Led Zeppelin. Now, aside from the differences in material that already appears on the final albums, we also have some material that never appeared on those albums as well. There is a great organ-driven track called La La on the companion disc to Led Zeppelin 2. We also have Jennings Farm Blues, which is basically an electric version of Bron-Y-Aur's Stomp, and Key to the Highway / Trouble in Mind, which was recorded during the same session for Hats Off to Roy Harper, and these appear on Led Zeppelin 3. On Presence, we have this beautiful piano ballad called 10 Ribs in All / Carrot Pod Pod, which definitely didn't fit the context of the album, but it is such a phenomenal outtake. And then on Coda, we have things such as Sugar Mama from the sessions for Led Zeppelin 1, and a great jam called St. Tristan's Sword, which was done during the sessions for Led Zeppelin 3. Now, granted, it is only a handful of tracks that are freshly released, but it goes to show that Jimmy Page, who was responsible for assembling the extra material, had a vision that saw these tracks to be featured as part of the overall Led Zeppelin oral story. Now, who's to say if there is more in the vaults that he has plans to release sometime in the future? We shall see, but it's nice to see some fresh stuff also included for us fans to enjoy. And that right there is how I went about upgrading my Led Zeppelin vinyl collection. Now here is a big question for you guys. Granted, I gave a brief summary of what entails with the companion discs of these deluxe editions. Would you guys like me to do an analysis video on each of the companion discs featured in the Led Zeppelin reissues? Please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support this channel, be sure to check me out on Patreon. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.